Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast.
And I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
This is our review of Earth Abides, episode 4 and episode 5. For those of you who do not know, MGM Plus has put both of these episodes online this weekend. Maybe this is their holiday gift to all of us that we get to watch a very sad couple of episodes of this show.
Oh, it was a gift. These two episodes were so good. I know there were some people out there that were hoping for more action and
Yeah.
more sort of diabolical things that would be happening. And boy, did Charming Charlie come in and bring that. What a terrible guy. He
Yeah.
came in feeling he was so charismatic, like coming in like Jared Leto, being like, I got water for you guys. Anything you want. Oh my goodness, was he a terrible person?
Oh, he's the absolute worst. And I think this episode in particular, or these two rather, it did a really good job of sort of explaining and justifying why we saw everything that we did. That not every show out there needs to have 100 supervillains wandering around all the
No.
time. But I think what this show was trying to tell us is that there are a lot of good and trustworthy people out there. And
Yeah.
sometimes your first impressions can be a little bit off. And we saw that with this here and there, but sometimes your intuition, unfortunately, can be right. And this is sort of what happens when he felt a certain way. He couldn't get anybody else to buy into it. And ultimately, these are the consequences, and the consequences are really severe.
Yeah, and I think that because Emma is such a good and trustworthy person and feels, that you can build community, that you're the last people on earth. Like, why wouldn't you want to come together and give people the benefit of the doubt? It's sort of that, do you have to earn somebody's trust or do you get somebody's trust until you break it? That sort of argument.
Well, before we go further and dive into that argument, this video is partnered with Apple TV Plus. If you check out the link below, there is an exclusive Matt and Jess TV link there that will take you over to the Apple TV Plus page where you can subscribe. That is a great way to support us. There's a lot of great Apple TV Plus coverage and that we do here on the channel for Before, Silo, Bad Sisters. We have Severance coming up. So that exclusive Matt and Jess TV link in the description will be your way to go over there, subscribe, and help to support us along the way. And thank you to everyone who is supporting us through that link.
Thank you. Okay, before we get too into what happened with the cougar and Charming Charlie, I have to give a shout out to the writers who gave me that beautiful Vikings line. I am such a Vikings fan. It is one of my most favorite shows ever.
Yeah.
I love Alexander Ludwig, and I love it when they were like, oh, our daughter, she's ready to go off into the world, Ish, it's because you taught her about the Vikings. And he was just like, oh my God, the Vikings. I was like, yes,
Okay.
yes. It just warmed my Vikings heart. Thank you so much to whoever included that line.
Listen, I know how much you like chocolate chip cookies, and I feel like the creative team baked you a whole pan of chocolate chip cookies when they gave you that line. They were
They
just like,
gave me everything.
this is for Jess. I will say
It was for me.
for ironic humor alone, I love the idea that they played in these two episodes Oasis's Don't Look Back in Anger, the most ironic song of all time. That of course Oasis would be the people who would make Don't Look Back. Okay, I can make so many Oasis jokes, I will not, but it's just that I really like a lot of the creative choices, both big and small,
Yeah.
in these episodes because they paid off a lot of stuff. They introduced a lot of new things at the same time. But yeah, we just need to have the Charming Charlie conversation here now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all expected that Ish was going to make it through this mountain lion attack, and he did. And we did learn a little bit more about Molly, where she was just like, yeah, I'm not actually a doctor. I started, I
Yeah.
didn't get finished with it, but she was able to help save his life. And
Yeah.
I think that's all that really mattered in the end. And even his support of being on the table and being the patient, being like, you did a great job. Look, I'm here. Things are working out. Like, yeah, it's a long healing process. But he got there. And I think that with that long healing process, when Charming Charlie shows up and he's charismatic. He's got all the answers. They're running out of water. Oh, he just happens to have a water pump. He's going to be able to, drill them a well. Everything is great. Everybody loves him. He's pulling in Ish's son, where Ish and Alex are having a really hard time connecting. And it's, and Ish, even just physically, I mean, Alexander Ludwig is a big guy, and
Yeah.
he is a jacked guy. Like, he's a
Yes.
very strong guy. So for him to be sort of playing that role as Ish, where he's a strong guy, but he's also a very intellectual guy, and he's a geologist, and he relies on all these different things for him to be able to survive. To have someone like Charlie come in, who's like big and buff and, drilling the well, and he's just unable to do it right now because he's still healing from what happened. There were so many different just emotional things in play for Ish that just had his guard up.
I will say this first and foremost. This is a very weird observation. I'm probably the only one who thought this. When I saw Charlie for a moment, the actor playing him actually kind of looks a little bit like Alexander Ludwig to me. And I was just sort of being like, is he playing both of these people? And he's just going, I know he wasn't, but that was a weird introduction for me. But I will say that a lot of what's going on here with Ish in the early going, it is a little bit of what you described, where, yeah, intuition was ultimately right on his part, but were his red flags up necessarily for all of the right reasons? I think some of them, yeah, but I think there was this other element of it where he's used to being the provider, and here's somebody else coming in and being the provider. And I think that's the sort of thing that can breed jealousy, that can breed this sort of notion of, oh, this person must be bad because they're taking over my job. They're doing something that I'm supposed to do. But the real reason why all this ended up panning out like it did for Ish is that he was able to sort of detect all of these other things that Charlie was doing that were really, really sketchy and not great from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I really like about this show. The show is about sort of the human condition and making connections, and who should you trust and who shouldn't you trust, and what you would trust within yourself. And because Ish was going through all of these things, he was the provider for, over 10 years. I think it's like 17 years now, for so long. He's the provider. He's, physically strong. He's mentally strong. To then be sort of pulled out of that position because of what happened with the mountain lion, it's taking him a while. To then have this other guy come in, for me as an audience watching this, I'm like, okay, is his intuition right because he feels something is wrong with Charlie? Or is it off because Charlie's coming in and filling a role that he's feeling insecure about? I couldn't figure it out as we were going on with this until he started looking at Evie a little off. And then when you've got Emma being like, well, she's an attractive woman, of course he's going to be looking at her, I was like, that doesn't feel right. I know Emma wants to see the best in everybody, but I don't see the best in that. Like, there's something really off about it.
Like, it's easy to sit here and sort of shake a lot of these other characters and be like, what was wrong with you guys? Why couldn't you see this stuff when we were on the outside seeing it? And Ish is clearly seeing it. I think what's happening in a psychological level, and it's played really well on the show, is just this notion of, okay, we've been out here for a very, very long time now. And in this time, we've welcomed all sorts of new people. And yeah, we've had people who may be dysfunctional or maybe have this thing wrong or that thing wrong. And they've been through some of that I think characters like Emma, they wanted to see the best in Charlie. They wanted to overlook some of these things. But I think they also got caught up on what he can offer the community, that they were willing to sort of overlook or ignore these other problems. And I don't think they were willfully ignoring something that was a huge red flag that could really hurt or devastate somebody. But I think in a different situation, if this was, I don't know, the real world, and Charlie didn't have this inherent use because they were in this sort of post-apocalyptic environment, like, I like to think that the red flags with him would have been a little bit clearer.
I think they probably would be more clear. It's always hard with somebody who has that kind of charisma. Like, I've only met a few people in my life that have that kind of charisma. They weren't like Charlie where they're terrible, but they were very much like, people are just very attracted to them. And I don't mean like lovers. I mean,
Yeah.
like, just people wanted to be around that energy. They just commanded a room. You wanted to listen to them. You wanted to believe in them. It was just the way that it is. It's so weird to see it in real life,
Yeah.
but it makes sense where he's going to come in. He's going to have this charisma about him that he's got people following him and doing this. They've done this before where they've
Yeah.
gone to communities that need water. Because I was like, wow, this is a real coincidence. They're running out of water, and here comes Charming Charlie with a way to dig a well. How convenient. It's just like, well, it's not convenient. He's been going around doing this to communities for a long time now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of big questions that come from all of that, where it's like, okay, this is the end of the world, seemingly. What do you get out of this? Isn't it better to try to put up roots? Why are these other people that are with you putting up with some of this? And we saw kind of a lot of the breakdown of this group as episode 5 in particular went along, and everyone started to have different opinions there. But we got just enough of, I think, Charlie psychologically to sort of understand why he's a bad dude. If this was an 8-episode show, I probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more of him just so that we can kind of dig into his head and make the ultimate payoff of this guy being taken out like that much more significant and satisfying. But with the show of this length, they basically did everything that they could do. And I get why they gave us these 2 episodes at once, as much as I enjoy watching this show week to week. This was kind of the saga of Charlie in its own sort of mini movie sort of way.
It was also kind of surprising that, I guess, because Charlie had been doing this a long time and going to different
Yeah.
communities and sort of taking them over for as long as he was taking them over. When he got to this community and was kind of like, oh, I want to set up roots here, like you guys should, by hitting that subscribe button here at the channel. It's a good segue.
Hey, that was great.
That it's like, okay, well, if he was going around to different communities and setting up shop there, why was he then moving away from them over time? Like, why did he decide this was the place that he was going to do that? And if he was deciding this was the place, he's charismatic enough and intuitive enough to kind of figure out, or I think he would have figured out, that Emma would have allowed him to just take one of the houses and set up shop there. He didn't need to do what he did to Evie or drive them out or do what he was doing to the other places. This was a community that would have had them stay there.
Yeah, he's just clearly a character who could not either accept that idea or did not even want that idea, where he just wants to lord over people and he wants to have all of this power, and in the most horrible way, a lot of power over women, where he thinks that he can do or want or act however he pleases, and that these other people are going to serve him. Like, that's clearly his idea of happiness, and it's really uncomfortable to watch, and the show made it really uncomfortable to watch.
I think he also just knew that once Ish was in better shape from, what happened with the mountain lion, that Ish was really going to be somebody he was going to end up having to fight down the line. But I think he would have been able to figure out a way to take him out in another way, where it's like, oh, he happened to fall down this hole, or we were out hunting and this accident happened. Oh, well, now I'm the leader of the group.
It's a really interesting way that they handled the, okay, how do we take care of Charlie problem? Because this is something that
Very interesting.
yeah, like, this is something that I'm always really into, and I've played a lot of, like, the Civilization games before. I've done some, like, online RPGs and this stuff that's all kind of about building a society and, like, how do you create your local government? How do you set up all the rules? Like, this stuff is always really, really interesting to me, and they've got their little community, and they've been very lucky in that they haven't had to deal with anything like this. But then they have to figure out, okay, this person's done this horrible thing. What do we do? Do we just, put them in the room and do what happens over on From? Or is there just
They go in the box.
Yeah, they go in the box and then, let the monsters take, but there's no monsters that are roaming around at night here. So they really have to figure out what to do themselves. And it's tough because you could imprison him, but like they said, once one person's in a prison, then everybody's in a prison.
This was one of the very few shows, one of the only shows that I can think of off the top of my head from what I've watched in my experience, that has really dove into this exact thing where there's a group of people, end
Yeah.
of the world type stuff, and you have to deal with actually taking out another human and what that means
Yeah.
and how that changes the dynamic. I mean, Jorge was the holdout where they were
Yeah.
having a meeting and it was like, what are we going to do about this? Can't we just send him away? No, he's going to come back. Can we put him in a prison? No, that changes the dynamic in a really miserable way where now we have this prisoner. This is the only option is he needs to be taken out. And Jorge was just like, if we do this,
Yeah.
it changes everything within this group. Everything. We cannot walk this back. And everyone's like, yeah, we know that. But on the same thing, this can't be walked back of what happened to Evie either.
Yeah.
Like she can never walk that back. That's something she gets to carry forever now.
And I think you can watch this episode and effectively understand a lot of the different perspectives that are going on here amidst this
Yeah.
discussion where they felt like this is something that had to be done. And I understand why Jorge is saying that this is a road you can't walk back. But then it's sort
Yeah.
of like, okay, if you keep him alive, then you have to basically take care of him once you put him in prison and you're limiting your resources. There's a chance he gets out. And there's all these
Yeah.
other problems that just emerge from that. But they approach it, I think, in a really mature way. How he is handled is extremely brutal. The Earth Abides way of taking him behind the barn is ish hitting him with a hammer again and again and again.
And the guy who stood guard, I was like, man, they
Yeah.
they took me on a journey with that
Yeah.
because they're like, okay, you obviously can't stay here. You have to
Yeah.
go. And he goes and then he comes back and he's like, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anyone. And I was just like, please don't let him in there. It is just he is as
Yeah.
bad standing outside that door, letting that happen and not helping and listening to her screams. You cannot let him be in there. And they strung that out so long that I was like, oh no, they're gonna let him in, and they didn't. I was like, oh,
It was it was
they
a
took
very
me on a journey.
it was a really intense scene. It was the intense version of going one of those like ice cream places where the guy's just like playing around with the cone and putting the ice cream and he thinks he's giving it to you and he's not. And I was just like, what is gonna happen here? No, they handled that the right way, but now we all have to get collectively sad, everybody, because the ending of episode 5 is the biggest punch to the stomach imaginable. It seems like everything that caused the first wiping out of most of the human race is back. I am putting on a hard hat here because
Oh,
we
okay.
we have not read the source material here, so
No.
we don't know how this ends. But I'm sort of sitting here now with this feeling that Ish started this show alone, and I think he's probably going to end it alone.
Yeah, it does feel like that is where we are going. I mean, we've had Ish in, episode 3, 4, and 5 now, still really struggling with him starting this show alone. Like, even before everything came in and wiped everyone out, he was living by himself in a cabin
Yep.
doing, his work. And he was really happy living that type of lifestyle, seeing people once in a while. It was fine for him. And he's really been struggling as the community's been getting bigger and bigger
Yeah.
and bigger, that he's been needing more and more time alone. He even went out into the woods and got lost. And, it's happening where he's really struggling to get that little piece of himself back, where he's able to be alone. And as I mentioned in our other view, I'm like that as well. I spent a lot of my life alone. So having people around is nice and I really enjoy it, but I also still need that minute in the morning by myself before
Mhm.
anybody's around me to be able to still have that touchstone. So I understand where he's coming from, but with this coming back,
Yeah.
it feels like we're being led back to him just being on his own.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a devastating thing to think about when you imagine all of their plans for the future of the human race and what they've been working towards. And all of that is really hard. And I think it's going to pose this question of, okay, if this is the way the show ends, what's the point of all of that? But I think it has to do with just the fundamental nature of humans to keep fighting and keep trying to find a way to create the best Earth that you can, but then also with people, and I know this is a message that has been shared on a million different shows, but I think it's still very important. That's just, live every day to the max, to find the most that you can out of your life. And that's what Ish has done in this devastating circumstance. He found family, he found love, he was able to, yeah, he kind of lost a couple of parts of himself along the way, but he also found all these other things, and he found a way to try to help humanity go on as long as it possibly can.
Or tinfoil hat, he's going to wake up from a snake bite alone.
It's certainly
I
possible.
don't think that's where they're going, but it's possible. I mean, this could be all a huge snake bite fever dream that he started alone
Yeah.
in his cabin, got bit by the snake, and woke up alone back in his cabin, and all of this was just part of the snake fever dream. I really hope it's not going to be like it was all dream.
No.
But it's possible. I mean, you never know. But one of the things that I really like is that even with this next time jump where now his son is sick and other people are getting sick, he is still dealing with the after effects of what he did to Charlie and his choice that he made
Yeah.
to take Charlie out. That this isn't something that just he did it, he had to do it, he Rick Grimes the situation, and now he's moving forward and he's got to kill whoever he's got to kill. That's not what's happening here. This is a very realistic human feeling of I had to do this and I took a life, and it is sitting with him
Yeah.
for years.
It's sitting with him and it's affecting him in a big way. And it's a great counterbalance to the millions of shows out there where we see somebody be taken out every episode or two.
And nobody cares.
Yeah,
And
nobody
everybody's
cares.
fine.
They
with
just
it.
forget all about it and then they move on. Like, this show is taking a very realistic approach to psychology, to how this affects people, that we can kind of imagine ourselves in these sort of situations. And I think it's really, really effective in that way. Like,
Yeah.
I understand the criticism that this show hasn't had enough going on and that it's slow paced and all of that, but it has been just a refreshing change of pace. And I, as delusional as this is, and I know it's been a long time since we paid a visit to the delusional ice cream parlor that I have built, where I just go in there and
Forgot about that.
it still exists. And I want to make a big ol', I don't know, I love cookies and cream. So a big cookies and cream cone of delusion here that Ish is going to be out there and he's actually going to find a cure for this, and he'll be able to come back and heal people, and they actually will be able to continue. But the reality in my head suggests that this is not really a show about that. I mean, the title is Earth Abides, and that's about the planet continuing. It's not humanity abides or humanity continues. It's I just think it's a very specific story that we're being told here.
Yeah, I don't think this is really about whatever this illness was at the beginning or what the illness is now, or if it's mutated or changed or trying to find a cure. I think it's just it's kind of it is what it is, and how do we adapt with it, or can we get past it?
What I'm trying to say here in summary is that I'm probably going to cry in the finale, and I am just preparing myself accordingly. And yeah, this show is ending around the holidays, and that's going to be a little bit weird. But it's going to be, I think, a really emotional end. But regardless of how it ends, I'm happy we went on this journey. I think this is going to end up being probably one of the most underrated shows of the year, just because a lot of people don't even know it exists.
Easily one of the most underrated shows. I know that, yeah, some people have been feeling that the pace is too slow. I've really liked it quite a bit. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I don't think it's too slow. I mean, they're jumping years and all these different things are happening. For me, it has been really refreshing. This has been a really surprising show for me, where, we just came out of From, and we're watching Silo, where it all has this, like, move fast and break things energy. And then in comes Earth Abides, where it's really a show about human condition and connections and trust and rebuilding, and just a show that I can't even think of anything to compare it to. Like, it's really its own thing that I've never really seen before.
It's refreshing. It's original. I think these are the best 2 episodes that they've done so far.
Yeah, they're really good.
I haven't put on a beef hat once. I haven't even contemplated grabbing the beef hat.
No, we're not dragging anything. These 2 episodes are really good.
No, well, that's what we got to say here. But hit that subscribe button, as Jess mentioned earlier, because we will be back to cover the finale. And if you want to support us further, join our Patreon. We've got that link in the description. We are covering Dune Prophecy exclusively in video form there. Thank you guys so much for your support. We'll see you here next time.